Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is where you're listening. So delighted to have the opportunity to share with you all some really interesting research and also some of our insights into that research. So we've been exploring and looking into the importance of brand and thought leadership in B2B decision making. And we've got some fascinating facts and figures to share with you. We've also got some polls to hopefully tempt you to try and guess what some of the responses are, because I think there's some really interesting and perhaps unexpected findings. So first of all, just to introduce who is Code Red. You may or may not have heard of us. As Christina said, we are partners with Insight. We're in the portfolio partner category with Insight Partners, and we work with, we're pleased to say, with some of their portfolio companies. The Code Red network is a global specialist network of PR and marketing professionals across 87 countries. So we help build brand and thought leadership globally. And personally, I've been in this industry now for over 25 years. So I've had the privilege actually to work with lots of fascinating and disruptive tech startup companies over the years. So that's enough of the introductions. So I'm going to just share with you the agenda for today. So we want to talk through some of the survey findings. We undertook this research in January and February of this year. There were a number of other questions that we're not included in the interest of time. So we're sharing some of the more interesting findings later on in the follow-up email from Christina. That we're then going to, I hope my internet connection is okay. I've just got a message that it's unstable, so I'm hoping you can hear me. We're then going to move on from the findings to talk about what it takes to become a thought leader. What are the prerequisites in the thought leadership flywheel? And then I'm very pleased to say that we have one of our clients and also a former Insight partner representative or member who is from Thycotic, who's going to talk about in practice how they put into practice building brand and thought leadership as a means to establish success for their company in the marketplace. So that's the agenda. So we thought we'd perhaps get you involved initially, but first of all, just some background on the research itself. So this research was, to our knowledge, the first and only one of its kind. It was global research conducted across all of the regions you can see on the slide. 819 security decision makers. And the inspiration behind it was that we wanted to find out how much thought leadership and brand impacts on the buying decision within cybersecurity realm. We've probably all heard those statistics. I know Forrester has quoted 90% of the buying decision maker in a B2B situation is made before you even speak to a customer or prospect. So we wanted to test, is that true in the cybersecurity world? So hence that was the inspiration behind the research. So what do we, in the context of the survey as well, we outlined what we meant by thought leadership in this context. And it's not about product brochures, etc. This is very much about free thought leadership content, which companies share with their customers and prospects, intended to help them understand better topics, present themselves as experts. So to warm you up to the theme here, we wanted to pose a poll. So Christina, hopefully this technology is going to work and we should have a pop-up. So what percentage of IT security decision makers spend more than 2 hours every week consuming thought leadership content? we're interested to know if you could vote for, what is it, 26%? Is it 42%? Or is it 55%? We'll wait and see if what the feeling is. Okay, oh, and the results are in, and the top response is 42%. 50% of people expect 42% of security decision makers to spend more than 2 hours every week consuming thought leadership content. Well, let's find out if they're right. Ooh. Sorry, slight technical problem there. You're absolutely right, actually, spot on. 42% of security decision makers spend more than 2 hours each week consuming thought leadership content, which, when you consider how busy these people are, that is quite a surprising large amount of money that they're devoting to this, which of course is because it's immensely important in the job they do. In fact, looking here, 18% spend more than 3 hours. And as you know, we conducted this research amongst various different regions. So we did see some fairly significant differences between the regions. As you can see, Saudi Arabia being consuming and spending the most time consuming thought leadership content, and Singapore down the bottom. But nonetheless, I think what this illustrates is just how important a way this is for security decision makers to assimilate information about companies and technologies that are out there. So moving on then, goodness me. Okay, so the next question goes to the heart of the matter here. It asks our respondents, have you used thought leadership content to support your buying process of security products? And what this clearly shows is that 97% of respondents use thought leadership as a way to support and to inform their buying decisions. So that statistic alone illustrates just how vital this is and how much security decision makers are assimilating information and making decisions and impressions about vendors even before they speak to any salesperson at all. Okay, so another question that we asked was, we wanted to find out at what stage during the procurement process thought leadership is utilized. There's something of a feeling, I suspect, that this is something which is a top of funnel activity. Many times I've heard people say, oh, thought leadership, that's the top of the funnel. What this actually illustrates here is that thought leadership is vital at every single stage of the sales process, from that initial researching suppliers right through to making the final decision. So this is something that you neglect at your peril, frankly. There was another question that I haven't incorporated in this deck of slides, which also said that 35% of respondents awarded businesses to existing customers based on thought leadership. So even after the sales process is complete, this is still a way of generating business. And on the downside, 26% decided not to award business to a company, to an organization, based on a negative impression of their thought leadership content. Okay, so what do people think of the content that they're receiving? Overall, the impression I felt was rather good. So 50% say it's good, 17% say it's excellent. Clearly, there's some room for improvement, but nonetheless, this is a relatively good rate There was some previous research done on a broader by Edelman on looking at IT companies in general, rather than this is cybersecurity focused. And the impression was actually much lower for IT companies overall. So this is saying that the content we're generating isn't bad at all. So what are the sources of thought leadership that are most valued? Now, as you can see here, the top source for thought leadership content was actually the security and trade media. The reason for that, I guess, is quite simple, is that these are trusted sources, they are not paid for sources, and so I think it validates the importance of being in front of your audience in these really credible channels. The second most popular being using your own keywords to search out a topic. And then the third, unsurprisingly, I guess, is content which is recommended by colleagues and contacts that you know. I was surprised to see national newspapers a little bit further down the list, but I guess we're talking about security decision makers. If we were talking about CXO and C-suite, I think that we might expect to see the national newspapers. And then further down at the bottom, we see the paid advertorial engagements. Again, there was a variation in the theme across the different regions, but there was a consistency overall in the order. So I'm going to challenge you all now to another poll, if you'll bear with me. So Christina, would you mind firing up? Okay. So what percentage of security decision makers do you think would be willing to pay a premium to deal with a company they perceive as a thought leader? Is it 28%? Is it 42%? Or is it 74%? If you'd make your choices now, let's see what the consensus is. Okay, so 28%, sorry, 9% voted 28%, 29% have voted for 42%, and 63% think it's 74%. Okay, let's see what it was. Ooh. So you're pretty good at this, I must say. It is in fact 74%. So again, if any of you in marketing or sales are challenged and asked to justify expenditure on thought leadership and brand building, I think that statistic alone illustrates just, it's not just, you can actually charge a premium if you are perceived as a thought leader in this market. That's immensely powerful. Another of the stats on here that I thought was interesting, particularly given the audience of this session, is that it was felt that thought leadership is a really important way for smaller cybersecurity companies to get our attention. It's affordable and it's incredibly impactful. So let's moving on, mindful of time. Okay, one final poll. You've got 100% success so far. So let's see if we can continue that trend. What social platform or media platform do you think is the most used by IT security decision makers in a professional capacity? So that's not for their personal use, that's for their professional capacity. Do you think it's Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or WeChat? I'm interested to see what people guess on this one. Okay, so the most popular there is LinkedIn. 79% think that LinkedIn is the most popular social media platform. Twitter's second, and then third we've got YouTube. Okay, interesting. In fact, the top social media platform was actually Facebook, which I did find quite surprising. I would say that there was quite a dramatic difference between this from a regional perspective, as you would imagine. And in fact, in the UK, LinkedIn was the highest, with Facebook second. So there are, again, some quite strong differences. But the other thing here that I think is interesting is that 72% of security decision makers actually use social media within their professional capacity. So I guess the message here is this is very much part and parcel. It should be of an integrated marketing program and building those engagements. So what makes great content, thought leadership content? So the top two criteria are its relevance, of course. So we're always more interested in receiving thought leadership on topics that we're actually currently working on, or we have a project that we're researching. Ease of consumption is of primary importance. And then third to that is the relationship and trust in the person who shared it with you. Originality is, of course, also relevant and important, and the length and format is the final element. So all of these factors we need to bear in mind if we're going to ensure that this actually engages and entertains our audience. So moving on then to look at that's the kind of, hopefully you've got a flavour for the research and just how important thought leadership is right across the security, the decision-making process. So what do you need to do in order to create a thought leadership position? Okay. So first and foremost, you need to identify your space. One of the common mistakes that companies make is they try and comment and be all things to all men. It's important that you identify a niche that you can become the go-to experts in. And make sure that you research that, talk to your sales and marketing team. What are the issues that your customers really care about now? And make sure that the experts that you are putting forward to comment have a background which aligns with the audience that you're trying to engage with. So obviously, if you're looking to engage with a business audience, you want to have someone that can talk about the commercial aspects of their role. If you're talking to a more technical audience, your spokespeople need to be more technical in nature. Providing third-party validation, that originality of content is so vital as well. And don't expect this to happen overnight. Thought leadership is something that requires a constant drumbeat of activity to achieve. You need to allocate time, both in terms of how long it will take to achieve that position, but also in terms of your experts, that they will have to invest time in order to be perceived as true specialists in their area. Okay, sorry. Okay, so the second point is about relevance. We looked and saw in the research how important having something which is relevant is to our audience. So aligning your experts' knowledge, their backgrounds, of course, may make them even more credible. So if we're talking about something, I don't know, nation state attacks, for example, if you have someone with a military background, that's going to be so much more compelling. So the expert themselves can add to the credibility of the message they're projecting. Another very common mistake is to focus too much on the vendor viewpoint. You have to make your point of view relevant to the customers. So whatever content you're creating, whatever message you're conveying, stand in the shoes of your customer and think about what it means to them, not what you want to tell them. That's selling. Think about the benefits. Make it relevant, of course, to your business. It would be ludicrous to be positioning yourself as experts in something that wasn't core to what you do, but that doesn't mean talk about your products. People aren't interested in products. They're interested in how you're going to overcome their challenges, and that's how you need to present yourself. And making sure that you're in front of them at the time that they're making that decision, which means that you need to create a longer term engagement. Thought leadership doesn't happen overnight. It's something that requires constant effort in order to achieve, but it is worthwhile, as we're already seeing. So thought leadership is about being visionary. So the people that you put forward as your spokespeople are extremely, extremely important. So choose those spokespeople carefully. Don't choose it based just on politics. So the most senior person may not be the best spokesperson. You want someone that can explain complex issues in a very easy and fluid way. You want people that can communicate effectively. So think carefully about those spokespeople. Make sure that they're able to freely express their opinions. Don't hamstring them too much with too many constraints around, messaging that makes them, which turns into a straitjacket. They have to be able to express their opinion. They have to be authentic. Certainly where the media is concerned, that credibility is vital. Make sure that you back up your claims with data. Third-party evidence is so much more compelling than what the vendor is saying. So think about how you can make your message compelling by working with third parties who perhaps have even higher credibility to you. That will help you in turn to elevate yours. Don't just describe things. Again, I look at so many websites and it's all about describing a problem. If you're going to be a thought leader, you need to be insightful and you need to be offering advice and guidance that are actually going to help your audience to solve some of the problems. Make sure that you're not saying what everybody else is saying. That's just bland. You want to be a little bit edgy. You want to be able to lead a conversation and stand out from the crowd. And the security marketplace is such a noisy one that unless you have that originality, you won't succeed. And make sure that you're devoting resources to creating that content. If you don't have your own labs, your own data, spend time on research, for example, spend money on research to make sure that it's not just about quantity, it's actually about quality. So, and the next point is trust. Being a thought leader means building trust with your audience, building credibility and consistency. And social media can help do that. So having the endorsements of others on social media will amplify and elevate your arguments. But think about who else might be able to enhance your credibility, whether it's customers, whether it's professional organizations, whether it's even your channel partners, analysts. Think about ways that you can really get others involved in your conversation. And don't think about selling. Be generous with your advice. Offer it freely. Don't put it behind gated content all the time. You want people to be able to access it. And finally, actually, almost finally, brevity. Choose the medium carefully. We did find in our survey, unsurprisingly, that video content which can be consumed really easily and quickly is of the most value. So think about what is the right medium to communicate your message and have multiple channels to engage. Be succinct and back up your claims with hard evidence. A good trick to do is to think about what are the headlines here, and try and drill down to the actual core message. Final point here is about attribution and measurement. So before we invest in any marketing activity, we need to know what success looks like. So setting those clear KPIs, thinking about not only the quantity of engagement that you're getting, but also the quality that you're getting, and make sure that you're building all kinds of different types of content, whether it's video, podcasts, case studies, webinars such as this. There are so many different ways that you can get your message through. And one thing we did learn from the survey was that during COVID, the reliance on thought leadership as a source of information for security professionals had grown even more. But remember that thought leadership takes time. You don't get leads on day one. You may get some, but it's more about engagement. You're building engagement. You're there for the long run. So in summary, before I hand over to Anna, who's going to present a case study, just in summary, competitive advantage is achievable through thought leadership. It can be the difference between, it can make for success. And particularly for startups, it gives them the ability to shine in a way that is impactful and cost effective. The most engaging type of content is that which is easy to consume, has original content, and think about getting others to share that content. So use your social platforms to do that. The impact of thought leadership is not just at the top of the funnel. It is right the way through the sales process and beyond. So its value is immense. And finally, it has immense power to influence. Thinking back to that figure of 97% of security decision makers use thought leadership to help them make a decision. So I'd like now to hand over to Anna. Anna's going to talk to us about how she's actually implemented this strategy and successfully deployed brand and thought leadership to create a very successful marketing strategy. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you so much. So hello and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Anna and I lead Thycotic Centrify International Marketing Team. I will give you a whistle-stop overview of how the Thycotic leverage content and thought leadership for demand generation. But first, I think I need to ask Diane to share my slides. I'm not sure. Oh, excellent. I think the screen is starting now. Brilliant. We will get to my first slide any second now. Yes. So as I was saying, I will give you a whistle-stop overview of what we did to leverage thought leadership for demand generation. But first, I want to just give you a bit of an overview of who is Thycotic and what do we do as a company. So can I please have the next slide? Excellent, thank you. So we operate in a crowded cybersecurity space, and Thycotic specializes in privileged access management. We're very proud to be Gartner's Magic Quadrant leader, and even more chuffed as a marketing team to be recognized and receive a shout out from Gartner throughout the report, and praising our marketing strategy as well conceived and executed. So just wanted to give you a little bit of that external validation about the company and our marketing efforts. So enough about the company. I want to give you a sneak peek into our marketing strategy. And Diane shared a number of really insightful findings from the survey research, talking about, for example, thought leadership influencing the entire sales process, not just top of the funnel. And I personally strongly believe that in order to keep influencing as marketing opportunities or the deals, we have to remember that throughout the buying cycle, new stakeholders will be introduced to the process, especially when you're in enterprise space. And these individuals, depending on their involvement, will be at the so-called top of the funnel, despite the opportunity being further down the funnel. So they will do their own research. They will rely on that thought leadership to find out more about your company. And our idea of successful marketing is to create integrated campaigns where all marketing tactics work in tandem. So our thought leadership, brand awareness activities work hand in hand with demand generation. And what we experience is that when growing a company from a startup phase or expanding into new territory, we found that PR activities that, again, external validation can enhance demand generation, keeping your marketing engine running and feeding leads to sales team to turn into revenue, because at the end of the day, it's an important thing to keep the engine going as well. So our key to fast growth is basically value. You'll hear me talking about this throughout my slides. So it's how can we deliver value to end users, prospects, channel partners, or colleagues, sales colleagues across the organization. So as a marketing team, we are doing so through high quality content, positioning the company as a trusted advisor in the market. So how do we do that? Well, we are creating a consistent message and promote consistent message across all the different channels. So I quite like to talk about these 4 strategic marketing pillars. So sometimes creating campaigns, take a step back and to think about kind of back to basics marketing 101. So first of all, defining consistent message. And that's something that Diane was talking about as well. Something that resonates with the market. So don't talk about yourself and focus on the prospect. It's so tempting. We all know this, right? To talk about our features and benefits, especially if we as marketeers are really proud of the product. It's cutting edge, great in the market. We want to talk about it, but we really need to resist this temptation and find topics that are aligned with, of course, company vision, but also add value by helping prospects and customers solve their challenges. And also, Diane mentioned the engaging evangelists or spokespeople. Have a chat with your product marketing team, product management, your sales engineers, if you have them, even sales leaders. They are adding that value. They're talking to customers day in and day out. So in a lot of cases, they will already have this charisma. And if the customers are trusting them and buying the products from them, sometimes with a little bit of shaping and help from marketing team, they could be phenomenal prospects, phenomenal evangelists. And if you're lucky enough to have a dedicated headcount for an evangelist, oh, that's even better. That's basically your job done almost. So that expertise that you're showing in the market will really help get external validation of your product. Once you win your audience's trust through that thought leadership, your product will be perceived as more valuable in the market because of that, again, external validation. And then, of course, create assets that, again, you'll be tired of me talking about this, but again, add value to end users, your white papers, webinars, free tools. Some people say it's free consulting. Maybe it is, but we know that the currency here is prospects' contact details. And in our world where we are much more savvy about data protection, and we don't give away our contact details unless we see the real value. It's so important to make sure that the content that we're creating for our prospects for demand generation is truly unique and valuable. And last but not least, I'm sure that everyone knows this, it's not build and they will come. You actually have to promote the message across your relevant channels and tailor the message to the channels as well. We've also found out that repeating the same message across multiple channels multiple times will generate some results, but it's so much better to work either as part of the team or with your PR agency on different angles when you're creating marketing campaigns and want to leverage thought leadership. So on my next slide, I've highlighted a few campaign examples. I thought I will give you a bit of an overview of what type of activities do we do and assets that we create to leverage PR efforts. And all these assets are cornerstone pieces of our campaign. So we work very closely with our PR agency. We work very closely with Code Red, with Diane and other agencies across the international territory in US. And we create, as part of the bigger strategy, opinion pieces and thought leadership pieces around these reports. So you'll see here some research reports, third-party research reports. We do research pieces during, for example, trade shows. So if your budget is smaller, you can, for example, when you're attending one of the conferences, sometimes organizers will be happy for you to actually run a survey during the event, and findings from these surveys also can be leveraged by the PR efforts as well as demand generation. So on my next slide, I want to deep dive a little bit. I know I only have 5 minutes, and I'm infamous for talking a lot, actually. So on this, my last meaty slide, I want to give you a whistle-stop overview of a campaign that we launched in Q4 last year. So we've been running a series of research reports called the CISO Success over the past 3 years. And every year we're focusing on a slightly different topic. So in Q4, we've decided to tackle the topic of IT purchasing and investigate how IT departments make technology decisions. So why did we do it? What was our why? Well, Gartner, Forrester, KuppingerCole, they all talk about PAM being one of the top priorities, PAM, so privileged access management, one of the top priorities for IT teams. And you look at different compliance, you look at government regulations, and they all advise to invest in privilege access, protecting IT administrators, protecting your keys to the kingdom. But when we talk to the channel partners or our sales colleagues, we often hear that PAM is not a priority. So I asked them a few times, so what do the end users buy instead if they don't buy PAM? And all these people say PAM is so important. And they told me firewalls. Everyone is buying firewalls. This is a solid product. Well, last year showed that firewalls, despite being absolutely essential element of infrastructure protection, there needs to be more on top of that. So especially when users work remotely and you want to protect the keys to the kingdom. So when users work outside of the safety of firewalls. So we wanted to run this research project to increase visibility in the market, be very relevant in the context of conversations that are really important for IT teams at that time. You'll see that we didn't really talk about a pandemic. We didn't think it was appropriate for our type of business, but we did want to ask about the challenges that IT departments have and how they're making decisions. And we also wanted to break into new territories. So that's why we used this survey as a means to start conversations in France, in Spain, Singapore, Malaysia. So we interviewed, or the third-party company that Code Red worked with and recommended that we work with, interviewed IT decision makers in the regions that we wanted to break into. So we did have almost an excuse, and we had fantastic content that we could use to local press to entice them and help local press create messages, because we all know that journalists in various countries will say, oh yes, I know this works in UK, Australia, US, but we're different, we're special. And they probably are, they most certainly are. So when you come to them with data that's very relevant for them, and it's something unique, it's not something that you're saying, it's a third-party content, then an expert PR agency can really help create these opinion pieces. And that's why we've also wanted to run this particular survey for that reason. And of course, we wanted to investigate how prospects make cybersecurity decision. And then last but not least, we really wanted to supercharge our demand generation during the time where, we couldn't attend physical events. So what did we do? We commissioned an independent survey that was interviewing over 900 IT decision makers from companies with over 500 employees. That was our targeted audience. We ran surveys in key focus geos. So for us, it was at that point, US, UK, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, France, Spain, Malaysia, and Singapore. And we leveraged the findings, analyzed them in collaboration with Code Red, and created a compelling story. We didn't want the story just to last over 1 quarter. We wanted the story to be leveraged by various different marketing tactics over a longer period of time. So we utilized content for PR, social, and demand generation. So how did we do it? We translated the content into relevant languages. That's so important when you're actually breaking into a new geo to make sure that you do have some content in local language. Data sheets are, of course, very important, and information about your product, your sales team would want that. But also to show that market that there is a new player in town and you do have something valuable, and actually you're very relevant to their circumstances. That's invaluable. So, and we used the content in local languages and in English, of course, for PR. We've done webinars, we did events, email, pay-per-click activities, sponsorship activities, content syndications. We put our eggs in various different baskets. So we also took the content to the road, and I was telling you about our evangelists. So again, if you do have colleagues speaking local language in the geo that you want to target, and I strongly recommend that before launching any marketing activities in a new geo, first it's good to have a foot on the ground, even a virtual person responsible for territory. So we took the content on the virtual road, and we briefed speakers to comfortably talk about, to comfortably deliver the presentations, comfortably talk about the findings. And as I mentioned, we were milking it. We created various different angles, and we were running this campaign. We still do bits and bobs in various different channels, but we were really focusing on it throughout Q4 last year and Q1 this year as well. And just to give you a little bit of an overview of the results, it's all very relative, right? Different companies, different way we talk about successes and the metrics. But for our company, we are diligently tracking ROI on our activities and pipeline. We look at the full waterfall and the first touch. We also, of course, look at multi-touch, but we're very metric driven. So this campaign overachieved on all our goals and KPIs. And again, just to give you a little bit of an understanding, for this piece of content, we had just under 1,000 downloads in the first few months, and that's a fantastic result for us for a completely new piece of content. We usually have around 300 people attending our webinars. This time we had over 400. So again, really good result for us. And we ran a few different webinars, and all the results were very, very strong. And the campaign generated phenomenal PR results. Loads of coverage across all our focus geographies, but we also got really good coverage in regions where we didn't run the survey. So Nordics and Benelux, it was picked up by local media and promoted by local agencies as well. So that was a really nice surprise that other regions also found this content valuable, despite it not being conducted in the regions. And our sales team also asked us to incorporate some of the findings in their sales pitches, because this particular research report was talking about things like 50% of all IT infrastructure purchased products never get fully utilized. So our story and our key USP is about ease of use and easy implementation and so on. So that was a third-party independent stat that our sales team could use for their presentations. And just last but not least, one of my favorite ones, a bit of an anecdotal thing. During the virtual kickoff, one of the sales team came to me and said, "Oh, Anna, it's so nice to go into an end user and do a demo, and people don't ask you what or psychotic, ha ha ha. So for me, that was one of the biggest compliments as a marketing person, where you have your sales colleagues really appreciate the efforts that the team is doing. So it's one of my most favorite KPIs. So that's the end of my little presentation. I just want to leave you with a few parting thoughts, a bit of a summary. So that's what we always talk about when we create new campaigns here at Thycotic. Think about yourself as a marketing person. How do you source your new MarTech software or look for new vendors? How do you do research? And you've heard me talking about this few times throughout presentation. Someone else's validation is always better, always gives you more credibility. Don't talk about yourself. Think how you can add value and work with experts. I mean, it's such an invaluable thing to do. So lastly, why trust anything that I'm telling you? Well, another external validation. We grew from minimal international revenue 4 years ago to unicorn validation in April, and we're very proud. So I hope this whistle stop case study gives you some food for thought for your future campaigns. And I'll pass on the floor back to Diane and Christina. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anna and Diane, for an informative presentation. If anyone has questions for our two panelists, please feel free to enter them into the Q&A now, and I'll allow for just a few minutes to let those trickle in. And while we're waiting, I'll also say that for anyone who missed this, we will be sending an email later today with a link to the recording of this session, as well as the slides and the full report where you saw all those results, what they came from.
Christina, I think you've exhausted the topic.
Quiet crowd. Okay.
Nothing else to add.
That's totally fine. That means be educated properly. Well, if there are no questions for the panelists, we appreciate everyone taking, we do have a question. Who did Thycotic work with on the commission survey?
Perfect. So that's actually a question for both Diane and myself. So we actually worked with Code Red and Diane's team, Eclat, to create the survey, to come up with a topic. And of course, it was a group effort working with our PMM team over at Thycotic and of course Code Red to come up with questions, the right angles. And Diane's team recommended a very good company. Diane, it was called Sapio, wasn't it? Sapio.
Research, yeah. I mean, we work with lots of different research companies, I must say, and it's always a kind of balance between a company that's responsive and quick, that has the coverage, and also that's cost effective. So we've seen quite a wide variation in costs, I have to say, between research companies. So having someone that you can trust, we've used this company a number of times.
Wonderful. And I'll plug again for any portfolio companies on the line. We do have a partnership with Code Red, and they've made a discount available, which we'll include in the follow-up. All right, 30 more seconds for questions. Otherwise, I'll give you a few minutes back in your day, which we can all appreciate now. All right, well, with that, thank you, Diane and Anna, for an amazing presentation, and everyone on the line. We hope to see you at the next event. Thank you all.
Thanks, Christina.
Thank you.